Selected readings by David Foster Wallace. Forever Overhead, from Brief Interviews with Hideous Men. Happy birthday. Your 13th is important, maybe your first really public day. Your 13th is a chance for people to recognize that important things are happening to you. Things have been happening to you for the past half year. You have 7 hairs in your left armpit now, 12 in your right. Hard, dangerous spirals of brittle black hair, crunchy animal hair. There are now more of the hard curled hairs around your privates than you can count without losing track. Other things. Your voice is rich and scratchy and moves between octaves without any warning. Your face has begun to get shiny when you don't wash it. And 2 weeks of a deep and frightening ache this past spring left you with something dropped down from inside. Your sack is now full and vulnerable, a commodity to be protected. Hefted and strapped in tight supporters that stripe your buttocks red. You have grown into a new fragility. And dreams. For months there have been dreams like nothing before, moist and busy and distant, full of yielding curves, frantic pistons, warmth and a great falling. And you have awakened through fluttering lids to a rush and a gush and a toe-curling, scalp-snapping jolt of feeling from an inside deeper than you knew you had. Spasms of a deep, sweet hurt, the streetlights through your window blinds cracking into sharp stars against the black bedroom ceiling, and on you a dense white jam that lisps between legs, trickles and sticks, cools on you, hardens, and clears until there is nothing but gnarled knots of pale, solid animal hair in the morning shower. And in the wet tangle, a clean, sweet smell you can't believe comes from anything you made inside you. The smell is, more than anything, like this swimming pool. A bleached, sweet salt, a flower with chemical petals. The pool has a strong, clear blue smell, though you know the smell is never as strong when you're actually in the blue water as you are now, all swum out, resting back along the shallow end, the hip-high water lapping at where it's all changed. Around the deck of this old public pool on the western edge of Tucson is a cyclone fence the color of pewter, decorated with a bright tangle of locked bicycles. Beyond this is a hot black parking lot full of white lines and glittering cars, a dull field of dry grass and hard weeds, old dandelions' downy heads exploding and snowing up in a rising wind. And past all this, reddened by a round, slow September sun, are mountains, jagged, their tops sharp angles darkening into definition against a deep red, tired light. Against the red, their sharp connected tops form a spiked line, an EKG of the dying day. The clouds are taking on color by the rim of the sky. The water is spangles off soft blue, 5 o'clock warm, and the pool smell, like the other smell, connects with a chemical haze inside you, an interior dimness that bends light to its own ends, softens the difference between what leaves off and what begins. Your party is tonight. This afternoon, on your birthday, you have asked to come to the pool. You wanted to come alone, but a birthday is a family day. Your family wants to be with you. This is nice, and you can't talk about why you wanted to come alone, and really, truly, maybe you didn't want to come alone, so they are here, sunning. Both your parents sun. Their deck chairs have been marking time all afternoon, rotating, tracking the sun's curve across a desert sky heated to an eggy film. Your sister plays Marco Polo near you in the shallows with a group of thin girls from her grade. She is being blind now, her Marcos being poloed. She is shut-eyed and twirling to different cries, spinning at the hub of a wheel of shrill girls in bathing caps. Her cap has raised rubber flowers. There are limp old pink petals that shake as she lunges at blind sound. There, at the other end of the pool, is the diving tank and the high boards tower. Back on the deck behind is the snack bar, and on either side, bolted above the cement entrances to dark wet showers and lockers, are gray metal bullhorn speakers that send out the pool's radio music, the jangle flat and tinny thin. Your family likes you. You are bright and quiet, respectful to elders, though you're not without spine. You are largely good. You look out for your little sister. You are her ally. You were 6 when she was 0, and you had the mumps when they brought her home in a very soft yellow blanket. You kissed her hello on her feet out of concern that she not catch your mumps. Your parents say that this augured well, that it set the tone. They now feel they were right. In all things they are proud of you, satisfied, and they have retreated to the warm distance from which pride and satisfaction travel. You all get along well. Happy birthday. It is a big day, big as the roof of the whole southwest sky. You have thought it over. There is the high board. They will want to leave soon. Climb out and do the thing. Shake off the blue clean, your half-bleached, loose and soft, tenderized pads of fingers wrinkled. The mist of the pool's too clean smell is in your eyes. It breaks light into gentle color. Knock your head with the heel of your hand. One side has a fat, flabby echo. Cock your head to the side and hop, sudden heat in your ear. Delicious, and brain-warmed water turns cold on the nautilus of your ears outside. You can hear harder, tinnier music, closer shouts, much movement in much water. The pool is crowded for this late. Here are thin children, hairy animal men, disproportionate boys, all necks and legs and knobby joints, shallow-chested, vaguely bird-like, like you. Here are old people moving tentatively through shallows on stick legs, feeling at the water with their hands, out of every element at once. And women curved like instruments or fruit, skin burnished, brown bright, suit tops held by delicate knots of fragile colored string against the pull of mysterious weights, suit bottoms riding low over the gentle juts of hips totally unlike your own, immoderate swells and swivels that melt into light into a surrounding space that cups and accommodates the soft curves as things precious. You almost understand. The pool is a system of movement. Here now there are laps, splash fights, dives, corner tag, cannonballs, sharks and minnows, high fallings, Marco Polo. Your sister's still it, halfway to tears, too long to be it, the game teetering on the edge of cruelty, not your business to save or embarrass. Two clean little bright white boys, caped in cotton towels, run along the poolside until the guard stops them dead with a shout through his bullhorn. The guard is brown as a tree, blonde hair in a vertical line on his stomach, his head in a jungle explorer hat, his nose a white triangle of cream. A girl has an arm around a leg of his little tower. He's bored. Get up now and go past your parents who are sunning and reading and not looking up. Forget your towel. Stopping for the towel means talking, and talking means thinking. You have decided being scared is caused mostly by thinking. Go right by, toward the tank at the deep end. Over the tank is a great iron tower of dirty white. A board protrudes from the top of the tower like a tongue. The pool's concrete deck is rough and hot against your bleached feet. Each of your footprints is thinner and fainter. Each shrinks behind you on the hot stone and disappears. Lines of plastic wieners bob around the tank, which is entirely its own thing, empty of the rest of the pool's convulsive ballet of heads and arms. The tank is blue as energy, small and deep and perfectly square, flanked by lap lanes and snack bar and rough hot deck and the bent late shadow of the tower and board. The tank is quiet and still and heeled smooth between fallings. There is a rhythm to it, like breathing, like a machine. The line for the board curves back from the tower's ladder. The line moves in its curve, straightens as it nears the ladder. One by one, people reach the ladder and climb. One by one, spaced by the beat of hearts, they reach the tongue of the board at the top. And once on the board, they pause, each exactly the same tiny heartbeat pause, and their legs take them to the end, where they all give the same sort of stomping hop, arms curving as if to describe something circular, total. They come down heavy on the edge of the board and make it throw them up and out. It's a swooping machine, lines of stuttered movement in a sweet late bleach mist. You can watch from the deck as they hit the cold blue sheet of the tank. Each fall makes a white that plumes and falls into itself and spreads and fizzes. Then blue clean comes up in the middle of the white and spreads like pudding, making it all new. The tank heals itself 3 times as you go by. You are in line. Look around. Look bored. Few talk in the line. Everyone seems by himself. Most look at the ladder, look bored. You almost have crossed arms, chilled by a late, dry rising wind on the constellations of blue, clean, chlorine beads that cover your backs and shoulders. It seems impossible that everybody could really be this bored. Beside you is the edge of the tower's shadow, the tilted black tongue of the board's image. The system of shadow is huge, long, off to the side, joined to the tower's base at a sharp, late angle. Almost everyone in line for the board watches the ladder. Older boys watch older girls' bottoms as they go up. The bottoms are in soft, thin cloth, tight nylon stretch. The good bottoms move up the ladder like pendulums in liquid, a gentle, uncrackable code. The girls' legs make you think of deer. Look bored. Look out past it. Look across. You can see so well. Your mother is in her deck chair, reading, squinting, her face tilted up to get light on her cheeks. She hasn't looked to see where you are. She sips something sweet out of a bright can. Your father is on his big stomach, back like the hint of a hump of a whale, shoulders curling with animal spirals, skin oiled and soaked red-brown with too much sun. Your towel is hanging off your chair, and a corner of the cloth now moves. Your mother hid it as she waved away a sweat bee that likes what she has in the can. The bee is back right away, seeming to hang motionless over the can in a sweet blur. Your towel is one big face of Yogi Bear. At some point, there has gotten to be more line behind you than in front of you. Now no one in front except three on the slender ladder. The woman right before you is on the low rungs, looking up, wearing a tight black nylon suit that is all one piece. She climbs. From above there is a rumble, then a great falling, then a plume, and the tank reheals. Now two on the ladder. The pool rules say one on the ladder at a time, but the guard never shouts about it. The guard makes the real rules by shouting or not shouting. This woman above you should not wear a suit as tight as the suit she is wearing. She is as old as your mother and as big. She is too big and too white. Her suit is full of her. The backs of her thighs are squeezed by the suit and look like cheese. Her legs have abrupt little squiggles of cold blue, shattered vein under the white skin, as if something were broken, hurt in her legs. Her legs look like they hurt to be squeezed, full of curled Arabic lines of cold, broken blue. Her legs make you feel like your own legs hurt. The rungs are very thin. It's unexpected. Thin, round iron rungs laced in slick, wet safety felt. You taste metal from the smell of wet iron and shadow. Each rung presses into the bottoms of your feet and dents them. The dents feel deep and they hurt. You feel heavy. How the big woman over you must feel. The handrails along the ladder sides are also very thin. It's like you might not hold on. You've got to hope the woman holds on too. And of course, it looked like fewer rungs from far away. You are not stupid. Get halfway up in the open. Big woman placed above you, a solid, bald, muscular man on the ladder underneath your feet. The board is still high overhead, invisible from here, but it rumbles and makes a heavy flapping sound. And a boy you can see for a few contained feet through the thin rungs falls in a flash of a line, a knee held to his chest, doing a splasher. There is a huge exclamation point of foam up to your field of sight, then scattered claps into a great fizzing. Then the silent sound of the tank healing to new blue all over again. More thin rungs. Hold on tight. The radio is loudest here, one speaker at ear level over a concrete locker room entrance, a cool, dank whiff of the locker room inside. Grab the iron bars tight and twist and look down behind you, and you can see people buying snacks and refreshments below. You can see down into it, the clean white top of the vendor's cap, tubs of ice cream, steaming brass freezers, scuba tanks of soft drink syrup, snakes of soda hose, bulging boxes of salty popcorn kept in the hot sun. Now that you're overhead, you can see the whole thing. There's wind. It's windier the higher you get. The wind is thin through the shadow. It's cold on your wet skin. On the ladder in the shadow of your skin looks very white. The wind makes a thin whistle in your ears. 4 more rungs to the top of the tower. The rungs hurt your feet. They are thin and let you know just how much you weigh. You have real weight on the ladder. The ground wants you back. Now you can see just over the top of the ladder. You can see the board. The woman is there. There are 2 ridges of red, hurt-looking callus on the backs of her ankles. She stands at the start of the board, your eyes on her ankles. Now you're up above the tower's shadow. The solid man under you is looking through the rungs into the contained space the woman's fall will pass through. She pauses for just that beat of a pause. There's nothing slow about it at all. It makes you cold. In no time, she's at the end of the board, up, down on it. It bends low like it doesn't want her. Then it nods and flaps and throws her violently up and out, her arms opening out to inscribe that circle, and gone. She disappears in a dark blink, and there's time before you hear the hit below. Listen. It does not seem good the way she disappears into a time that passes before she sounds like a stone down a well. But you think she did not think so. She was part of a rhythm that excludes thinking, and now you have made yourself part of it too. The rhythm seems blind, like ants, like a machine. You decide this needs to be thought about. It may, after all, be all right to do something scary without thinking, but not when the scariness is not thinking itself. Not when not thinking turns out to be wrong. At some point, the wrongnesses have piled up blind, pretend boredom, weight, thin rungs, hurt feet, space cut into laddered parts that melt together only in a disappearance that takes time. The wind on the ladder, not what anyone would have expected. The way the board protrudes from the shadow into light and you can't see past the end. When it all turns out to be different, you should get to think. It should be required. The ladder is full beneath you, stacked up, everyone a few rungs apart. The ladder is fed by a solid line that stretches back and curves into the dark of the tower's canted shadow. People's arms are crossed in the line. Those on the ladder's feet hurt, and they are all looking up. It is a machine that moves only forward. Climb up onto the tower's tongue. The board turns out to be long as the time you stand there. Time slows. It thickens around you as your heart gets more and more beats out of every second, every moment in the system of the pool below. The board is long. From where you stand, it seems to stretch off into nothing. It's going to send you someplace which its own length keeps you from seeing, which seems wrong to submit to without even thinking. Looked at another way, the same board is just a long, thin, flat thing covered with a rough white plastic stuff. The white surface is very rough and is freckled and lined with a pale watered red that is nevertheless still red and not yet pink. Drops of old pool water that are catching in the light of the late sun over sharp mountains. The rough white stuff of the board is wet and cold. Your feet are hurt from the thin rungs and have a great ability to feel. They feel your weight. There are handrails running above the beginning of the board. They are not like the ladder's handrails. Just hold on to them. They are thick and set very low, so you almost have to bend over to hold on to them. They are just for show. No one holds them. Holding on takes time and alters the rhythm of the machine. It is a long, cold, rough white plastic or fiberglass board, veined with the sad, near pink color of bad candy. But at the end of the whiteboard, the edge, where you'll come down with your weight to make it send you off, there are two areas of darkness, two flat shadows in the broad light, two vague black ovals. The end of the board has two dirty spots. They are from all the people who've gone before you. Your feet, as you stand here, are tender and dented, hurt by the rough, wet surface, and you see that the two dark spots are from people's skin. They are skin abraded from feet by the violence of the disappearance of people with real weight. More people than you could count without losing track. The weight and the abrasion of their disappearance leaves little bits of soft, tender feet behind, bits and shards and curls of skin that dirty and darken and tan as they lie tiny and smeared in the sun at the end of the board. They pile up and get smeared and mixed together. They darken into circles. No time is passing outside you at all. It is amazing. The late ballet below is slow motion, the overbroad movements of mimes in blue jelly. If you wanted, you could really stay here forever, vibrating inside so fast you float motionless in time, like a bee over something sweet. But they should clean the board. Anybody who thought about it for even a second would see that they should clean the end of the board of people's skin, of two black collections of what's left of before, spots that from back here look like eyes, like blind and cross-eyed eyes. Where you are now is still and quiet. Wind radio shouting, splashing, not here. No time and no real sound, but your blood squeaking in your head. Overhead here means sight and smell. The smells are intimate, newly clear. The smell of bleach's special flower, but out of it other things rise to you, like a weed's seeded snow. You smell deep yellow popcorn, sweet tan oil like hot coconut, either hot dogs or corn dogs. A thin, cruel hint of very dark Pepsi in paper cups, and the special smell of tons of water coming off tons of skin, rising like steam off a new bath. Animal heat. From overhead, it is more real than anything. Look at it. You can see the whole complicated thing, blue and white and brown and white, soaked in a watery spangle of deepening red. Everybody. This is what people call a view. And you knew that from below you, it wouldn't look nearly so high overhead. You see now how high overhead you are. You knew from down there, no one could tell. He says it behind you, his eyes on your ankles, the solid bald man. Hey kid, they want to know, do your plans up here involve the whole day, or what exactly is the story? Hey kid, are you okay? There's been time this whole time. You can't kill time with your heart. Everything takes time. Bees have to move very fast to stay still. Hey kid, he says, hey kid, are you okay? Metal flowers bloom on your tongue. No more time for thinking. Now that there is time, you don't have time. Hey, slowly now, out across everything, there's a watching that spreads like hit water's rings. Watch it spread out from the ladder. Your sighted sister and her thin white pack pointing. Your mother looks to the shallows where you used to be, then makes a visor of her hand. The whale stirs and jiggles. The guard looks up. The girl around his leg looks up. He reaches for his horn. Forever below is rough deck snacks, thin metal music down where you once used to be. The line is solid and has no reverse gear, and the water, of course, is only soft when you're inside it. Look down. Now it moves in the sun, full of hard coins of light that shimmer red as they stretch away into shards of light from the hearts of sad stars. The square tank is a cold blue sheet. Cold is just kind of hard, a kind of blind. You have been taken off guard. Happy birthday. Did you think it over? Yes and no. Hey kid. 2 black spots, violence, and disappear into a well of time. Height is not the problem. It all changes when you get back down, when you hit with your weight. So which is the lie, hard or soft, silence or time? The lie is that it's one or the other. A still floating bee is moving faster than it can. It can think. From overhead, the sweetness drives it crazy. The board will nod and you will go, and the eyes of skin can cross blind into a cloud-blotched sky, punctured light emptying sharp stone that is forever. That is forever. Step into the skin and disappear. Hello. From Infinite Jest. Tennis and the Feral Prodigy, narrated by Hal Incandenza, an 11.5-minute digital entertainment cartridge directed, recorded, edited, and according to the entry form, written by Mario Incandenza, in receipt of New England Regional Honorable Mention in Interlaced Tele-Entertainment's annual New Eyes, New Voices Young Filmmakers Contest, April in the year of the Ushitsu 2007 Mimetic Resolution Cartridge View Motherboard, easy to install upgrade for Infernatron interlaced TB systems for home, office, or mobile, almost exactly 3 years after Dr. James O. Incandenza passed from this life. Here is how to put on a big red tent of a shirt that has ETA across the chest in gray. Please ease carefully into your supporter and adjust the elastic straps so the straps do not bite into your butt and make bulged ridges in your butt that everyone can see once you've sweated through your shorts. Here's how to wrap your torn ankle so tightly in its flesh-tone ace bandages your left leg feels like a log. Here's how to win later. This is a yellow iron mesh ball hopper full of dirty green dead old balls. Take them to the east courts while the dawn is still chalky and no one's around except the mourning doves that infest the pines at sunrise, and the air is so soft you can see your summer breath. Hit serves to no one. Make a mess of balls along the base of the opposite fence as the sun hauls itself up over the harbor and a thin sweat breaks and the serves start to boom. Stop thinking and let it flow and go boom boom. The shiver of the ball against the opposite fence. Hit about 1,000 serves to no one, while himself sits and advises with his flask. Older men's legs are white and hairless from decades in pants. Here is the set of keys a stride's length before you in the court as you serve dead balls to no one. After each serve, you must almost fall forward into the court and in one smooth motion, bend and scoop up the keys with your left hand. This is how you train yourself to follow through into the court after the serve. You still, years after the man's death, cannot keep your keys anywhere but on the floor. This is how to hold the stick. Learn to call the racket a stick. Everyone does here. It's a tradition, the stick. Something so much an extension of you, it deserves a sobriquet. Please look. You'll be shown exactly once how to hold it. This is how to hold it, just like this. Forget all the near Eastern slice backhand grip baffle grab. Just say hello is all. Just shake hands with the calfskin grip of the stick. This is how to hold it. The stick is your friend. You will become very close. Grasp your friend firmly at all times. A firm grip is essential for both control and power. Here is how to carry a tennis ball around in your stick hand, squeezing it over and over for long stretches of time. In class, on the phone, in lab, in front of the TP, a wet ball for the shower, ideally squeezing it at all times except during meals. See the academy dining hall where tennis balls sit beside every plate. Squeeze the tennis ball rhythmically, month after year, until you feel it no more than your heart squeezing blood, and your right forearm is 3 times the size of your left, and your arm looks from across a court like a gorilla's arm or a stevedore's arm pasted onto the body of a child. Here's how to do extra individual drills before the Academy's AM drills, before breakfast, so that after the 1,000th ball hit just out of reach by himself with his mammoth wingspan and ghastly calves, urging you with nothing but smiles onto great and greater demonstrations of effort, so that after you've gotten your third and final wind and must vomit, there is little inside to vomit, and the spasms pass quickly, and an east breeze blows cooler past you, and you feel clean and can breathe. Here is how to don red and gray ETA sweats and squad jog in a weekly 40-kilometer up and down urban Commonwealth Avenue, even though you would rather set your hair on fire than jog in a pack. Jogging is painful and pointless, but you are not in charge. Your brother gets to ride shotgun while a senile German blows BBs at your legs, both of them laughing and screaming Schnell. Enfield is due east of the Marathon Hills Heartbreak, which are just up Commonwealth past the reservoir in Newton. Urban jogging in a sweaty pack is tedious. Have himself bunched down to put a long pale arm around your shoulders, and tell you that his own father had told him that talent is a sort of dark gift, that talent is its own expectation. It is there from the start and either lived up to or lost. Have a father whose own father lost what was there. Have a father who lived up to his own promise and then found thing after thing to meet and surpass the expectations of his promise in, and didn't seem just a whole hell of a lot happier or tighter wrapped than his own failed father, leaving you yourself in a kind of feral and flux-ridden state with respect to talent. Here's how to avoid thinking about any of this by practicing and playing until everything runs on autopilot and talent's unconscious exercise becomes a way to escape yourself, a long, waking dream of pure play. The irony is that this makes you very good, and you start to become regarded as having a prodigious talent to live up to. Here is how to handle being a feral prodigy. Here is how to handle being seated at tournaments, signifying that seating committees composed of old, big-armed men publicly expect you to reach a certain round. Reaching at least the round you're supposed to is known at tournaments as justifying your seed. By repeating this term over and over, perhaps in the same rhythm at which you squeeze a ball, you can reduce it to an empty series of phonemes, just formants and fricatives, trocheally stressed, signifying zip. Here's how to beat unseeded, wide-eyed opponents from Iowa or Rhode Island in the early rounds of tournaments without expending much energy, but also without seeming contemptuous. Here's how to play with personal integrity in a tournament's early rounds when there is no empire. Any ball that lands on your side and is too close to call it fair. Here's how to be invulnerable to gamesmanship, to keep your attention's aperture tight. Here's how to teach yourself when an opponent maybe cheats on line calls to remind yourself that what goes around comes around, that a poor sport's punishment is always self-inflicted. Try to learn to let what is unfair teach you. Here's how to spray yourself down exactly once with Lemon Pledge, the ultimate sunscreen. Then discover that when you go out and sweat into it, it smells like close order skunk. Here's how to take non-narcotic muscle relaxants for the back spasms that come from thousands of serves to no one. Here is how to weep in bed, trying to remember when your torn blue ankle didn't hurt every minute. This is the whirlpool, a friend. Here is how to set up the electric ball machine at dawn on the days himself is away, living up to what will be his final talent. Here is how to tie a bow tie. Here is how to sit through small openings of your father's first art films, surrounded by surly foreign cigarette smoke and conversations so pretentious you literally cannot believe them. You're sure you have misheard them. Pretend you're engaged by the jagged angles and multiple exposures without pretending you have the slightest idea what's going on. Assume your brother's expression. Here is how to sweat. Here is how to hand a trophy to lateral Alice Moore to put in the ETA lobby's glass case under its system of spotlights and small signs. What is unfair can be a stern but invaluable teacher. Here is how to pack carbohydrates into your tissues for a 4 singles, 2 doubles match day in a Florida June. Please learn to sleep with perpetual sunburn. Expect some rough dreams. They come with the territory. Try to accept them. Let them teach you. Keep a flashlight by your bed. It helps with the dreams. Please make no extramural friends. Discourage advances from outside the circuit. Turn down dates. If you do exactly the rehabilitative exercises they assign you, no matter how silly and tedious, the ankle will mend more quickly. This type of stretch helps prevent the groin pull. Treat your knees and elbow with all reasonable care. You will have them with you for a long time. Here is how to turn down an extramural date so you won't be asked again. Say something like, I'm terribly sorry I can't come out to see 8.5 revived on a wall-sized Cambridge Celluloid Festival viewer on Friday, Kimberly or Daphne, but you see, if I jump rope for 2 hours, then jog backwards through Newton till I puke, they'll let me watch match cartridges, and then my mother will read aloud to me from the OED until 2200 lights out. And see, so you can be sure that henceforth Daphne, Kimberly, Jennifer will take her adolescent mating dance type ritual socialization business somewhere else. Be on guard. The road widens and many of the detours are seductive. Be constantly focused and on alert. Feral talent is its own set of expectations and can abandon you at any one of the detours, so-called normal American life, at any time. So be on guard. Here is how to Schnell. Here is how to go through your normal adolescent growth spurt and have every limb in your body ache like a migraine because selected groups of muscles have been worked until thick and intensile, and they resist as the sudden growth of bone tries to stretch them, and they ache all the time. There is medication for this condition. If you are an adolescent, here is a trick to being neither quite a nerd nor a jock. Be no one. It is easier than you think. Here is how to read the monthly ETA and USTA and ONANTA rankings the way himself read scholars' reviews of his multiple exposure melodramas. Learn to care and not to care. They mean the rankings to help you determine where you are, not who you are. Memorize your monthly rankings and forget them. Here is how. Never tell anyone where you are. This is also how not to fear sleep or dreams. Never tell anyone where you are. Please learn the pragmatics of expressing fear. Sometimes words that seem to express really invoke. This can be tricky. Here's how to get free sticks and strings and clothes and gear from Dunlop Incorporated, as long as you let them spray paint the distinctive Dunlop logo on your stick strings, and sew logos on your shoulder and the left pocket of your shorts, and use a Dunlop gear bag, and you become a walking, lunging, sweating advertisement for Dunlop Incorporated. This is all as long as you keep justifying your seed and preserving your rank. The Dunlop Incorporated New England Regional Athletic Rep will address you as our Gray Swan. He wears designer slacks and choking cologne, and about twice a year wants to help you dress and has to be slapped like a gnat. Be a student of the game. Like most cliches of sport, this is profound. You can be shaped or you can be broken. There is not much in between. Try to learn. Be coachable. Try to learn from everybody, especially those who fail. This is hard. Peers who fizzle or blow up or fall down, run away, disappear from the monthly rankings, drop off the circuit. ETA peers waiting for Delent to knock quietly at the door and ask to chat. Opponents. It's all educational. How promising you are as a student of the game is a function of what you can pay attention to without running away. Nets and fences can be mirrors. And between the nets and fences, opponents are also mirrors. This is why the whole thing is scary. This is why all opponents are scary and weak opponents are especially scary. See yourself in your opponents. They will bring you to understand the game, to accept the fact that the game is about managed fear, that its object is to send from yourself what you hope will not return. This is your body. They want you to know you will have it with you always. On this issue, there is no cancel. You must make your best guess. For myself, I do not expect to ever really know. But in the interval, if it is an interval, here is Motrin for your joints, Noxema for your burn, Lemon Pledge if you prefer nausea to burn, Contracol for your back, benzoin for your hands, Epsom salts and anti-inflammatories for your ankle, and extracurriculars for your folks who just wanted to make sure you didn't miss anything they got. The view from Mrs. Thompson's from Consider the Lobster. Location, Bloomington, Illinois. Dates 11 through 13, September 2001. Subject, obvious. Synecdoche. In true Midwest fashion, all people in Bloomington aren't unfriendly, but do tend to be reserved. A stranger will smile warmly at you, but there normally won't be any of that strangerly chit-chat in waiting areas or checkout lines. But now, thanks to the horror, there's something to talk about that overrides all inhibition, as if we were somehow all standing right there and just saw the same traffic accident. Example, overheard in the checkout line at Burwell Oil, which is sort of the Neiman Marcus of gas station convenience store plazas, centrally located athwart both one-way main drags and with the best tobacco prices in town, it's a municipal treasure. Between a lady in an Osco cashier's smock and a man in a dungaree jacket cut off at the shoulders to make a sort of homemade vest. With my boys, they thought it was all some movie like that Independence Day, till then they started to notice how it was all the same movie on all the channels. The lady didn't say how old her boys were. Wednesday. Everyone has flags out. Homes, businesses. It's odd, you never see anybody putting out a flag, but by Wednesday morning, there they all are. Big flags, small, regular flag-sized flags. A lot of homeowners have those special angled flag holders by their front door, the kind whose brace takes 4 Phillips screws. Plus thousands of the little handheld flags on a stick you normally see at parades. Some yards have dozens of these stuck in the ground all over, as if they'd somehow all just sprouted overnight. Rural road people attach little flags to their mailboxes out by the street. A good number of vehicles have them wedged in their grill or attached to the antenna. Some upscale people have actual poles. Their flags are at half-mast. More than a few of the large homes around Franklin Park or out on the east side even have enormous multi-story flags hanging gonfalon style down over their facades. It's a total mystery where people can buy flags this big, or how they got them up there, or when. My own next-door neighbor, a retired bookkeeper and U.S. Air Force vet whose home and lawn care are nothing short of phenomenal, has a regulation anodized flagpole secured in 18 inches of reinforced cement that none of the other neighbors like very much because they feel it draws lightning. He says there's a very particular etiquette to having your flag at half-mast. You're supposed to run it all the way down, all the way up to the finial at the top and then bring it halfway down. Otherwise, it's some kind of an insult. His flag is out straight and popping smartly in the wind. It's far and away the biggest flag on our street. You can also hear the wind in the cornfields just south. It sounds roughly the way light surf sounds when you're 2 dunes back from the shore. Mr. N's pole's halyard has metal elements that clank against the pole when it's windy, which is something else the neighbors don't much care for. His driveway and mine are almost right together, and he's out here on a stepladder polishing his pole with some kind of special ointment and a chamois cloth. I shit you not. Although in the morning sun it's true that his metal pole does shine like God's own wrath. Hell of a nice flag and display apparatus, Mr. M. Ought to be, cost enough. Seen all the other flags out everywhere this morning? This gets him to look down and smile, if a bit grimly. Something, isn't it? Mr. N is not what you'd call the friendliest next-door neighbor. I really only know him because his church and mine are in the same softball league, for which he serves with great seriousness and precision as his team's statistician. We are not close. Nevertheless, he's the first one I ask. Say, Mr. N, suppose someone like a foreign person or a TV reporter or something were to come by and ask you what the purpose of all these flags after what happened yesterday was exactly. What do you think you'd say? Why, after a little moment of him giving me the same sort of look he usually gives my lawn, to show our support towards what's going on as Americans. The overall point being that on Wednesday, there's a weird accretive pressure to have a flag out. If the purpose of displaying a flag is to make a statement, it seems like at a certain point of density of flags, you're making more of a statement if you don't have a flag out. It's not totally clear what statement this would be, though. What if you just don't happen to have a flag? Where has everyone gotten these flags, especially the little ones you can fasten to your mailbox? Are they all from the 4th of July and people just save them, like Christmas ornaments? How do they know to do this? There's nothing in the yellow pages under flag. At some point, there starts to be actual tension. Nobody walks by or stops their car and says, hey, how come your house doesn't have a flag? But it gets easier and easier to imagine them thinking it. Even a sort of half-collapsed house down the street that everybody thought was abandoned has one of the little flags on a stick in the weeds by the driveway. None of Bloomington's grocery stores turn out to stock flags. The big novelty shop downtown has nothing but Halloween stuff. Only a few businesses are actually open, but even the closed ones are now displaying some sort of flag. It's almost surreal. The VFW hall is obviously a good bet, but it can't open till noon, if at all. It has a bar. The counter lady at Burwell Oil references a certain hideous, quick and easy convenience store out by I-55, at which she's pretty sure she recalls seeing some little plastic flags back in the racks with all the bandanas and NASCAR caps. But by the time I get down there, they are all turned out to be gone, snapped up by parties unknown. The cold reality is that there is not a flag to be had in this town. Stealing one out of someone's yard is clearly just out of the question. I'm standing in a fluorescent lit, quick and easy, afraid to go home. All those people dead, and I'm sent to the edge by a plastic flag. It doesn't get really bad until people come over and ask if I'm okay, and I have to lie and say it's a Benadryl reaction, which in fact can happen. And so on until, in one of the horror's weird twists of fate and circumstance, it's the quick and easy proprietor himself, a Pakistani by the way, who offers solace and a shoulder and a strange kind of unspoken understanding, and who lets me go back and sit in the stockroom amid every conceivable petty vice and indulgence America has to offer and compose myself, and who only slightly later, over styrofoam cups of a strange kind of perfumey tea with a great deal of milk in it, suggests construction paper and magical markers, which explains my now beloved and proudly displayed homemade flag. Aerial and ground views. Everyone here gets the local news organ, the pantograph, which is roundly loathed by most of the natives I know. Imagine, let's say, a well-funded college newspaper co-edited by Bill O'Reilly and Martha Stewart. Wednesday's headline is Attacked. After two pages of AP stuff, you get to the real pantograph. Everything to follow is sick. Wednesday's big local headers are Stunned citizens run through many emotions. Clergy open arms to help people deal with tragedy. ISU professor BN not a likely target. Prices rocket at gas pumps. Amputee gives inspirational speech. There's a half-page photo of a student at Bloomington Central Catholic High School saying the rosary in response to the horror, which means that some staff photographer came in and popped a flash in the face of a traumatized kid at prayer. The op-ed column for 9/12 starts out, the carnage we have seen through the eyes of the lenses in New York City and Washington, D.C. still seem like an R-rated movie out of Hollywood. Bloomington is a city of 65,000 in the central part of a state that is extremely emphatically flat, so that you can see the town's salience from very far away. 3 major interstates converge here and several rail lines. The town's almost exactly halfway between Chicago and St. Louis, and its origins involve being an important train depot. Bloomington is the birthplace of Adlai Stevenson and the putative hometown of Colonel Blake on MASH. It has a smaller twin city, Normal, that's built around a public university and is a whole different story. Both towns together are like 110,000 people. As Midwest cities go, the only remarkable thing about Bloomington is its prosperity. It is all but recession-proof. Some of this is due to the country's farmland, which is world-class fertile and so expensive per acre that a civilian can't even find out how much it costs. But Bloomington is also the national HQ for State Farm, which is the great dark god of U.S. consumer insurance and for all practical purposes owns the town, and because of which Bloomington's east side is now all smoked glass complexes and build-to-suit developments and a 6-lane beltway of malls and franchises that's killing off the old downtown, plus an ever wider split between the town's 2 basic classes and cultures so wellly and truly symbolized by the SUV and the pickup truck respectively. Winter here is a pitiless bitch, but in the warm months, Bloomington is a lot like a seaside community, except here the ocean is corn, which grows steroidically and stretches out to the earth's curves in all directions. The town itself, in summer, is intensely green. Streets bathed in a tree shade and homes explosive gardens and dozens of manicured parks and ball fields and golf courses you almost need eye protection to look at, and broad, weedless, fertilized lawns all made to line up exactly flush to the sidewalk with special edging tools. To be honest, it's all a little creepy, especially in high summer, when nobody's out and all that green just sits in the heat and seethes. Like most Midwest towns, Bloomington Normal is crammed with churches, 4 full pages in the phone book. Everything from Unitarian to bug-eyed Pentecostal. There's even a church for agnostics. But except for church, plus I guess your basic parades, fireworks, and a couple of corn festivals, there isn't much public community. Everyone has his family and neighbors and tight circle of friends. Folks keep to themselves. The native term for light conversation is visit. They basically all play softball or golf and grill out and watch their kids play soccer and sometimes go to mainstream movies. And they watch massive, staggering amounts of TV. I just don't mean the kids either. Something that's obvious but important to keep in mind regarding Bloomington and the horror is that reality, any felt sense of a larger world, is mainly televisual. New York's skyline, for instance, is as recognizable here as any place else, but what it's recognizable from is TV. TV is also a more social phenomenon than on the East Coast, where, in my experience, people are almost constantly leaving home to go meet other people face-to-face in public places. There don't really tend to be parties or mixers per se so much here. What you do in Bloomington is all get together at somebody's house and watch something. In Bloomington, therefore, to have a home without a TV is to become a kind of constant and Kramer-like presence in others' homes, a perpetual guest of folks who can't quite understand why somebody wouldn't own a TV, but are totally respectful of your need to watch TV, and who will offer you access to their TV in the same instinctive way they'd bend to offer a hand if you fell down in the street. This is especially true for some kind of must-see crisis-type situation like the 2000 election or this week's horror. All you have to do is call someone you know and say you don't have a TV. Well, shoot, boy, get over here. Tuesday. There are maybe 10 days a year when it's gorgeous in Bloomington, and 11 September is one of them. The air is clear and temperate and wonderfully dry after several weeks of what's felt very much like living in someone's armpit. It's just before serious harvesting starts, when the region's pollen is at its worst, and a good percentage of the city is stoned on Benadryl, which, as you probably know, tends to give the early morning a kind of dreamy underwater quality. Time-wise, we're an hour behind the East Coast. By 8 o'clock, everybody with a job is at it, and just about everyone else is home drinking coffee and blowing their nose and watching Today or one of the other network AM shows that all broadcast, it goes without saying, from New York. At 8 o'clock on Tuesday, I personally was in the shower trying to listen to a Bears post-mortem on WSCR Sports Radio in Chicago. The church I belong to is on the south side of Bloomington, near where my house is. Most of the people I know well enough to ask if I can come over and watch their TV are members of my church. It's not one of those churches where people throw Jesus' name around a lot or talk about the end times, but it's fairly serious, and people in the congregation get to know each other well and to be pretty tight. As far as I know, all the congregants are natives of the area. Most are working class or retired from same. There are some small business owners, a fair number are veterans and or have kids in the military or especially in the reserves, because for many of those families, that's what you do to pay for college. The house I end up sitting with shampoo in my hair watching most of the actual unfolding horror at belongs to Mrs. Thompson, who is one of the world's cooler 74-year-olds and exactly the kind of person who in an emergency, even if her phone is busy, you know you can just come on over. She lives about a mile away from me and on the other side of a mobile home park. The streets are not crowded, but they're also not as empty as they're going to get. Mrs. Thompson's is a tiny, immaculate one-story home that on the west coast would be called a bungalow, and on the south side of Bloomington is called a house. Mrs. Thompson is a longtime member and a leader in the congregation, and her living room tends to be a kind of gathering place. She's also the mom of one of my best friends here, F, who was in the Rangers in Vietnam and got shot in the knee and now works for a contractor installing various kinds of franchise stores in malls. He's in the middle of a divorce, long story, and living with Mrs. T while the court decides on the disposition of his house. F is one of those veterans who doesn't talk about the war or belong to the VFW, but is sometimes preoccupied in a dark way and goes quietly off to camp by himself over Memorial Day weekend, and you can tell that he carries some serious shit in his head. Like most people who work construction, he wakes up very early and was long gone by the time I got to his mom's, which happened to be just after the second plane hit the South Tower, meaning probably around 8:10. In retrospect, the first sign of possible shock was the fact that I didn't ring the bell, but just came on in, which normally here one would never do. Thanks in part to her son's trade connections, Mrs. T has a 40-inch flat panel Philips TV on which Dan Rather appears for a second in shirt sleeves with his hair slightly mussed. People in Bloomington seem overwhelmingly to prefer CBS News. It's unclear why. Several other ladies from church are already over here, but I don't know if I exchanged greetings with anyone because I remember when I came in, everybody was staring transfixed at one of the very few pieces of video CBS never reran, which was a distant wide-angle shot of the North Tower and its top floor's exposed steel lattice in flames, and of dots detaching from the building and moving through smoke down the screen, and then a sudden, jerky tightening of the shot revealed to be actual people in coats and ties and skirts with their shoes falling off as they fell, some hanging onto ledges or girders and then letting go, upside down or wriggling as they fell, and one couple almost seeming unverifiable to be hugging each other as they fell those several stories and shrank back to dots as the camera then all of a sudden pulled back to the long view. I have no idea how long the clip took, after which Dan Rather's mouth seemed to move for a second before any sound emerged, and everyone in the room sat back and looked at one another with expressions that seemed somehow both childlike and terribly old. I think one or two people made some sort of sound. I'm not sure what to say. It seems grotesque to talk about being traumatized by a piece of video when the people in the video were dying. Something about the shoes also falling made it worse. I think the older ladies took it better than I did. Then the hideous beauty of the rerun clip of the second plane hitting the tower, the blue and silver and black and spectacular orange of it as more little moving dots fell. Mrs. Thompson was in her chair, which is a rocker with floral cushions. The living room has two other chairs, a huge corduroy sofa that F and I had to take the front door off its hinges to get in the house. All the seats were occupied, meaning I think 5 or 6 other people. Most women, all these over 50, and there were more voices in the kitchen, one of which was very upset sounding and belonged to the psychologically delicate Mrs. R, who I don't know very well, but is said to have once been a beauty of great local repute. Many of the people are Mrs. T's neighbors, and some are still in robes, and at various times people leave to go home and use the phone and come back, or leave altogether. One younger lady went to go take her children out of school, and other people came. At one point, around the time the South Tower was falling so perfectly, seeming down into itself, I remember thinking that it was falling the way an elegant lady faints, but it was Mrs. Bracero's normally pretty much useless and irritating son, Dwayne, who pointed out that what it really looked like is if you took some film of a NASA liftoff and ran it backward, which now after several reviewings does seem dead on. There were at least a dozen people in the house. The living room was dim because in summer here, everyone always keeps their drapes pulled. Is it normal not to remember things very well after only a couple of days, or at any rate, the order of things? I know at some point for a while there was the sound outside of some neighbor mowing his lawn, which seemed totally bizarre, but I don't remember if anybody remarked on it. Sometimes it seemed like nobody said anything, and sometimes like everybody was talking at once. There was also a lot of telephonic activity. None of these women carry cell phones. Dwayne has a pager whose function is unclear. So it's just Mrs. T's old wall mount in the kitchen. Not all of the calls made rational sense. One side effect of the horror was an overwhelming desire to call everyone you loved. It was established early on that you couldn't get New York. Dialing 212 yielded only a weird whooping sound. People keep asking Mrs. T's permission until she tells them to knock it off and for heaven's sake just use the phone. Some of the ladies reach their husbands, who are apparently all gathered around TVs and radios at their various workplaces. For a while, bosses are too shocked to think to send people home. Mrs. T has coffee on, but another sign of the crisis is that if you want some, you have to go get it yourself. Usually, it just sort of appears. From the door of the kitchen, I remember seeing the second tower fall and being confused whether it was a replay of the first tower falling. Another thing about the hay fever is that you can't ever be totally sure someone's crying, but over the 2 hours of first-run horror, with bonus reports of the crash in Pennsylvania and Bush being moved into a sack bunker and a car bomb that's gone off in Chicago, the latter then retracted, pretty much everybody either cries or comes very close according to his or her relative abilities. Mrs. Thompson says less than almost anyone. I don't think she cries, but she doesn't rock in her chair as usual either. Her first husband's death was apparently sudden and grisly, and I know at times during the war, F would be out in the field and she wouldn't hear from him for weeks at a time and didn't know whether he was even alive. Dwayne Bracero's main contribution is to keep iterating how much like a movie it all seems. Dwayne, who's at least 25 but still lives at home while supposedly studying to be a welder, is one of these people who always wears camouflage t-shirts and paratrooper boots but would never dream of actually enlisting. As to be fair, neither would I. He also has kept his hat, the front of which promotes something called Slipknot, on his head indoors in Mrs. Thompson's house. It always seems to be important to have at least one person in the vicinity to hate. It turns out that the cause of poor tendency Mrs. R's meltdown in the kitchen is that she has either a grandniece or removed cousin who's doing some type of internship at Time Incorporated in the Time Life building or whatever it's called, about which Mrs. R and whoever she's managed to call know only that it's a vertiginously tall skyscraper somewhat place in New York City, and she's out of her mind with worry, and the two ladies have been out here the whole time holding both her hands and trying to decide whether they should call her doctor. Mrs. R has kind of a history, and I end up doing pretty much the only good I do all day by explaining to Mrs. R where Midtown Manhattan is. It thereupon emerges that none of the people here I'm watching the horror with, not even the couple ladies who'd gone to see Cats as part of some group tour thing through the church in 1991, have even the vaguest notion of New York's layout and don't know, for example, how radically far south the financial district and Statue of Liberty are. They have to be shown this via pointing out the ocean in the foreground of the skyline they all know so well from TV. The half-assed little geography lesson is the start of a feeling of alienation from these good people that builds in me all throughout the part of the horror where people flee rubble and dust. These ladies are not stupid or ignorant. Mrs. Thompson can read both Latin and Spanish. Mrs. Voigtlander is a certified speech therapist who once explained to me that the strange gulping sound that makes NBC's Tom Brokaw so distracting to listen to is an actual speech impediment called a glottal L. It was one of the ladies in the kitchen supporting Mrs. R who pointed out that 11 September is the anniversary of the Camp David Accords, which was certainly news to me. What these Bloomington ladies are, or start to seem to me, is innocent. There is what would strike many Americans as a marked, startling lack of cynicism in the room. It does not, for instance, occur to anyone here to remark on how it's maybe a little odd that all 3 network anchors are in shirt sleeves, or to consider the possibility that Dan Rather's hair being mussed might not be wholly accidental, or that the constant rerunning of horrific footage might not be just in case some viewers are only now tuning in and hadn't seen it yet. None of the ladies seem to notice the president's odd little lightless eyes appear to get closer and closer together throughout his taped address, nor that some of his lines sound almost plagiaristically identical to those uttered by Bruce Willis as a right-wing wacko recall in The Siege a couple years back, nor that at least some of the weirdness of watching the horror unfold has been how closely various shots and scenes have mirrored the plots of everything from Die Hard 1 through 3 to Air Force One. Nobody's near hip enough to lodge the sick and obvious POMO complaint. We've seen this before. Instead, what they do is all sit together and feel really bad and pray. No one in Mrs. Thompson's crew would ever be so nauseous as to try and get everybody to pray aloud or form a prayer circle, but you can still tell that's what they're all doing. Make no mistake, this is mostly a good thing. It forces you to think and do things you most likely wouldn't alone, like for instance while watching the address and eyes to pray, silently and fervently, that you're wrong about the president, that your view of him is maybe distorted, and he's actually far smarter and more substantial than you believe, not just some soulless golem or nexus of corporate interests dressed up in a suit, but a statesman of courage and probity, and it's good. This is good to pray this way. It's just a bit lonely to have to. Truly decent, innocent people can be taxing to be around. I'm not for a moment trying to suggest that everyone I know in Bloomington is like Mrs. Thompson, e.g. her son F isn't, though he's an outstanding person. I'm trying rather to explain how some part of the horror was knowing deep in my heart that whatever America the men in those planes hated so much was far more my America and F's and poor old loathsome Dwayne's than it was these ladies.